So, what are my algos saying about the futures markets and how they're trending? I'm champion trader Kevin Davey, and let's find out. Okay, today is December 11th, and I want to give you an update of the short, medium, and long-term trendiness of the market sectors in the futures markets. So first, let's take a look at currencies and energies. Now last week we had currencies were really trending heavy. And what's happened in the past week is they've kind of pulled back a little bit and kind of consolidated. And you can see that in this chart of the Japanese yen, which actually has been in consolidation mode for a couple weeks now. For the energies, we're about the same as far as trendiness. They're trending, but they're not super trending. And you can see with this chart of crude oil that, yeah, they're trending upwards, but it's not super strong, but it is there. Next, if we move on to grains and meats, we can see the grains are even less trendy than they were last week. So they are more counter trend type markets. And you can see that as an example with wheat, where this past week wheat went up again against the trend which had been down for the last couple months. And then with meats, they went from almost trending to really being kind of a counter trend situation. And you can see that by looking at feeder cattle. And you can see that in this chart. Okay, next we look at interest rates and softs. And with interest rates, they were trending pretty heavily last week, except for the short term. The short term wasn't. And that turned out to be a good warning sign, because now, this past week, all the rates have kind of turned to counter trend in both the short, medium, and long term. And you can kind of see that with the 10-year Treasury notes, where the last week was kind of an upward movement against the major trend. So it was kind of a counter trend movement. And then with softs, they started to exhibit some more trendiness than they had. And a good example of that is cotton, which after a period of a month, 2 months of consolidation, kind of started to pick up that long-term bull trend again, especially in the past 3 or 4 days. So those are trending more. But even on the short term, you have to be careful, because that's pretty low, and that's kind of still signaling counter trend. And then finally, we have the stock market. Now last week the stock market was really trendy, and of course that was a bull trend. Now this week, the short, medium, and long-term stock are all exhibiting counter trend. And you can see that with the NQ, where the market's gone down a couple days and now it's kind of leveling off. So that's how all the major sectors are doing as far as trendiness. So people have asked, well, how can I use this information? Well, what I would do is look for short, medium, and long-term trends to all be in the same direction. That's usually a good sign. When there's mixed signals where the short term might be counter trend and long-term trend, you might want to stay on the sidelines. And also, where you see definite counter trend movements, you might also want to stay on the sidelines unless you trade with small stops and small profit targets, because if you don't, you run the risk of the trend changing, it going from counter trend back to trend, and you could get caught with some big losses, because don't forget, the trend would be the bigger movement, and a counter trend is kind of an opposite one that's a lot shorter, both in duration and smaller in size. So that's kind of how I would look at it. So again, that's the way the futures markets look with my algos as of December 11th. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later.